The first observation, I'm going to split my questioning in two categories. One is going to be spectrum ownership, because I don't think that's going to happen for small business. So then the fallback position is going to be this wonderful C block with open access, whatever that truly means. But the biggest fear, and I think that Mr. McCabe was the one that framed it best, and I repeat it basically from his testimony to Chairman Martin, and I'll pose this to Ms. Spencer. Do you believe that the big bidders' attention will be diverted from the encumbered Block C spectrum, the open access, into other areas, and that those other areas where the big bidders will be putting their money would be those areas that would be most attractive to the smaller bidders?
Well, I think that your kind of beginning here is right. Spectrum ownership has kind of gone away for small businesses, unfortunately. So I would hope that everybody could have an opportunity here. But I think unless the rules change, the small bidders aren't going to come in big numbers anyway. So it's somewhat, they're going to play everywhere. I would say on the open access, you know, if we can't get spectrum directly, where are small businesses going to play? And it's probably with them. So I would guard that C block and say, then that's okay.
Okay.
You know, open access is a fallback for small business if we can't get it ourselves.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and if we really believe FCC is not thinking ahead, we're all kidding ourselves. They've set up this game in a way where I do believe this is going to transpire. So then you're going to have to figure where your Verizons and AT&Ts, the open platform on Block C, but in a way bleeds over to other areas, and then down the road will be into access fees, special access fees, roaming fees, and all of that business. I mean, this is where it's all going. I don't know why we keep kidding ourselves, but the bottom line is big business is not going to own, little small business is not going to own spectrum. If you own spectrum, you build out networks. There's what you've done in your business life. So let's go into this open access, open platform, and all of that means. Mr. Black, let me ask you, if you came up with an application for a way for Charlie Gonzalez to order something on eBay and pay for it that mimics and competes with PayPal, would eBay allow that? The answer is no. Because go and talk to Google or anyone. These are the big guys. Skype. Small business, you were bought for $2.6 billion by eBay. eBay has a policy. They own PayPal. They don't allow anyone else to compete in that little environment. Why don't we have an open platform, open access, so that Mr. Black can come up with some sort of application and compete with what eBay basically monopolizes in their site? So my question, let's just say that's what's really going on. And I think that I'm right on this evaluation. But for Mr. Libertelli and Mr. Black, who pays for the network? Does Skype pay for the network? Does eBay pay for the network? Does Mr. Black's enterprise pay for the network? What I'm saying, who's building out the network? And so we do have special relationships, and I recognize that they can be problematic. But those contractual relationships are with device manufacturers, application providers, search engine providers, content aggregators, all of that in the business world. Now you're asking government basically to come in and say that you shouldn't have exclusive relationships at a certain level of the internet world, such as networks with devices and others, but we shouldn't be interfering with the other exclusive relationships that you are allowed to engage in at an entirely different level, such as PayPal and so on. And there are many other examples that would go beyond eBay and Skype. So I'm just saying, who pays for the network? It's like everybody, what you're telling me, Mr. Libertelli, Mr. Black, is the AT&Ts and the Verizons of this world have buses, and you'd like to get on that bus, right? That's open access, open platforms. But you guys also have cars, but you're not going to let anyone else get in that car and hitch a ride. because you're being, I do believe it's a monopoly. I just really have always had a problem with that argument. We'll see how this works out. But I do believe it is going to move on spectrum, because when it's all said and done, it's about the sale of spectrum. When it's all said and done, what we have here is not an unintended consequence. I think it could have been anticipated, that you're going to make that other spectrum that's unencumbered more attractive, which may have provided the best opportunities for small businesses to bid on it. I think that's gone. Now we have to live with what open access really means. So my real question comes down to Mr. Black and Mr. Libertelli. What are you doing to build out a broadband network that is so desperately needed in this country in the way of the wireless internet?
Time is expired, but I will allow for the witnesses to answer.
If I could try to offer a response to that, there's a lot in that question, and I understand some of the concerns you've expressed in there. The answer to your question is that AT&T doesn't pay for these networks. Consumers pay for these networks. That's the answer to who is funding the deployment of 700 megahertz spectrum or wireless spectrums generally. So we shouldn't be sort of under the notion that somehow the companies themselves,
I agree with you.
cover all
I
of
actually
the costs
think
from consumers.
I think maybe content aggregators and application providers and such, maybe you should share some of that expense
and a
rather
company like
than
eBay
just a
pays
consumer.
millions of dollars to buy network services from network operators every year. So each part of the ecosystem as a consumer is contributing to the deployment of these networks.